This is Julia's child. She's a floribunda, and she's very full right now. There are a lot of leaves on it. It's easier if they've got less leaves, because the idea is you want to get them to be just the canes and with no leaves. So we have a lot of work to do on this one. So what I do is I don't start up here and start working my way down. I just start where the height that I want it, because so you've got less cuts. And you're going to want to make your cut to right above the bud, about 1/4 of an inch. A bud is found right where you can pull the leaves off. There's a little bud where a new leaf can start growing. So you want it to cut it to a place where the bud is facing outwards, and it's not, you can't always find one that's facing outwards. Sometimes they're in different directions. You just don't want one that's growing inward, because you want the center of the rose to be open and airy, because then they need a lot of airflow to prevent diseases and insects and things. So you want the center to be open. So here I found a good one right there. So I'm just going to work my way around the rose and try to get in there a little bit so I can kind of see what I'm doing. And we will probably fast forward this through a lot of it, so you don't have to sit here and watch me going through this entire rose. So I am doing right above the bud. I'm doing it at an angle away from the bud, and that is so if water hits on it, if it rains or sprinklers, whatever, the water will go away from the bud. You don't want water just sitting there on that bud, because it could rot and get diseased and not perform for you. And I could note that when you're going ahead and deadheading your roses throughout the year, you can direct which way your rose will grow by where you cut it above the bud. If you don't want to have it grow out in the walkway, you can have a bud facing the other direction, so it'll grow how you want it. So you can do it like that. So I'm just going to pull these off as I go so I can see what's going on. You want to pull down. You don't want to cut them off, because you might not get the whole leaf. You want to get the whole thing so there's not any portion of the leaf there, because little insects could hibernate there during the winter, and then they're back in the springtime. So you want to pull these out. And I can tell right now, here's a little branch I want to cut, because it's growing, it's very skinny and it's growing right into another branch, so I'm going to remove that. Now with floribundas, the branches are usually a lot thinner than with a hybrid tea. So that you've heard probably cut anything that's smaller than a pencil width. But on a floribunda, I don't do that, because a lot of them are smaller than a pencil. So you have to consider which rose you're working with. And let me tell you, every single rose is different, just like a snowflake. So everyone, as you're pruning, you come across new situations where you're wondering, what do I do here? So every single rose is like that. Everyone's different. So yeah, at the very end, you're going to want to step back, take a look, and see, make some final decisions then. And I don't think there's any way you can kill a rose by pruning it, unless you cut it so low that you've got no buds to grow. So don't worry about being a little rough on your rose. I want the height to be a little bit above my knee here for these. So here, okay, now here's a little tiny little branch thing. I cut all of these off because they're never going to grow big enough to do anything. And you want to save all the energy for producing roses, not for producing these little stubby growth. So, and I do see a little branch right here that's growing inward. I'm going to remove that. So you can see we're starting to get somewhere. And here I come across a few things. This is a piece that was cut probably last year, and nothing grew except this one over here. So I'm going to take off this dead piece. See See if these clippers can do it. These are really good clippers. Got it. Here's another dead piece. And this rose got me. And then I've got a few more dead things here. You don't want to take off all the dead wood. Not doing anything. I'm going to take off this little piece too. And this little one's coming out in a very strange angle here, so I'm going to remove that. And I don't think it's ever going to produce flowers. So we're going to take that off. Another dead one. Okay. And I see a branch coming right across the middle. Like I said, that needs to come out because you want the inside to be very open and airy. You should be able to, when you're done, you should be able to stand up and look down and see the base of the rose. Now I like to do kind of like a, I don't know, a bowl shape, I guess. A little shorter on the outside, a little taller on the inside. It grows nicer, you know, when you do something like that. So, and I see a very, very dead cane right over there that I'm going to remove. Any dead canes, of course, are going to go. Sometimes, like this one, it's hard to know where to cut it because the only bud that's facing outward is way up here. So you're kind of determined by the rose and where it wants to put a bud out for you. Well, I'm just working my way around and cutting off, getting some of the height off of this, cutting to an outside bud. And this one, see how this is cutting right across? I'm going to go ahead and cut that whole thing off. And this little guy going right in the center like that. I'm going to cut all of those off. This one's coming off because it's going to cut other branches off. And this one, sometimes it's hard to... Oh, there's a bud. Perfect. Okay, and one more big one. Okay, we got the first part done. Now I'm going to go through and take off all of these leaves. It won't let me go. Just put these away and just pull off all the leaves. Try not to just throw them down here because I'm going to have to go through and pick up all the leaves afterwards. You don't want to leave any leaves around the rose bush because, like I said, they can have some disease overwintering on them, and then when the rain and the sprinklers start in, you will get the disease back on your rose bush. And you don't want to have a mulch. You don't want to have a mulch like this. This is the wood chippings, because it's so difficult to get your leaves up. You're going to pick up all the mulch too, but you should not have mulch right around the rose bush anyways. You cut that part off. Oh. So I'm going to pull all those out afterwards. Now here at the gardens, we tend to leave our roses a little bit fuller. Some people say only leave like 3 to 5 canes. We leave the cane if it's good and healthy because it's a show garden, and so we want to have nice full big roses. We are not looking to show our roses at rose competitions. We want our rose bushes to have a lot of blooms and to look beautiful the whole year through. I'm actually going to cut it right here because there's a bud that can grow straight up. So I'm going to leave that. I didn't cut it completely off. This one I'm going to cut because it's growing in the way of that one. And you want to give all of the canes a lot of space, room. You don't want things growing in. I've got these two guys crossing here. This one looks like it's bigger, thicker. I'm going to leave that one. I'm going to cut that one off. And this little skinny one I'm going to cut off also. See, so now that as you're looking at it, you can make some final choices. I'm going to go a little bit shorter. And I see some canes, some buds that are good ones that can grow out. And also things that you want to keep in mind is we need to have a little bit of space in between our roses, so I'm going to cut off this branch here so it's not growing into the other rose bush. And this one's growing inwards. Take that one off. I think that looks good for now. I'm going to get my wire brush where you want to brush all this wood that's just growing on like the bark. You brush that off. It gives the new canes more of a chance to poke through, so you can get some new healthy canes. As you get new healthy canes, you can cut off old ones that are spent and not going to produce much anymore. One thing to be mindful of with these roses that are grafted is you can get some shoots from below the graft that come up that need to be removed. They're always going to be a different color as your rose is the same color as the rootstock. Dr. Huey is a rootstock that they use often, and it's red. It's climbing, and so if you see a red flower on this long branch, you want to remove it. You don't want to just cut it because it could just keep regrowing back. You want to remove it as close as you can to where it's coming out. And clean it up, make them nice. And I think I would just leave it as it is, except the more you look at it, the more you want to keep going. So, there you go.